Hey, Battle Bill here with another video, and today we're going to be voyaging back into some Silph Arena battles. Get it? Because we're going to be talking about the Voyager Cup. Anyhow, today's video, as you could probably tell from the thumbnail and the title, we're going to be focusing on a specific Pokemon within the Voyager Cup. It might not be a Pokemon a lot of people are looking at. I think it's a fairly spicy pick. I've seen it in Go Battle Great League battles quite a bit as like an off-meta mon that works really nicely, and that Pokemon is going to be Galvantula. So, before I talk more about Galvantula and what I'm going to be using it for, I have 5 battles here against 2 different opponents that go pretty well. I showcase Galvantula's strengths, some of its weaknesses, how you can use it, and the ideal moveset you want to run on Galvantula. So, in my first battle, or my first 2 battles of this set of 5, I'm going against one opponent. On my team of 6, I have Galvantula, Marshtomp, that might be for another video, Venusaur, Altaria, Lucario, and Azumarill. My opponent's team of 6 is Dugong, Meganium, Azumarill, Altaria, Toxicroak, and Melmetal. Now, a quick little summary of what the Voyager Cup is again, is you get 6 Pokemon that are on your team that you can do whatever you want with those 6, essentially to form a team of 3 to battle with, but the team of 6 needs to fit certain requirements. For the Voyager Cup specifically, Silph wants you to pick 1 Pokemon from the Kanto region, 1 Pokemon from Johto, 1 Pokemon from Hoenn, 1 Pokemon from Sinnoh, got it this time, and 1 Pokemon either from Unova, Alola, or Galar. And then your 6th pick is a wild card that can be any Pokemon except for from a restricted 30 that Silph lets you know. And I'm not going to go through the entire list of the restricted 30. So, anyhow, that's how I came up with my team. That's how my opponent came up with their team. And in this first battle, I'm going to lead Galvantula, and I'm going to bring Marshtomp and Altaria behind it to essentially protect Galvantula from its counters, because Marshtomp would protect against Galvantula's main counter on his team, which would be Melmetal, and then Altaria would protect Marshtomp against its main counter on his team, which would be his Meganium. So, in this first match, the Pokemon I'm worried about seeing the most is going to be his Melmetal, and as we get into this match, I lead Galvantula, and what does he decide to lead? He decides to lead with his Melmetal. So here, I'm throwing Volt Switches, I'm debating to myself, do I want to swap? I'm worried about him hard countering my Marshtomp swap by bringing in his Meganium, so I'm still kind of debating it to myself. He gets to a charge move, which I'm like, okay, fine, I can shield 1, I don't mind that. I can throw this Discharge and find out how much damage it does, because at this point, I have no idea how much damage a Discharge would do against a Melmetal, and I'm still not going to know, because once this Discharge goes through, he decides to shield, so I decide I want to swap, just because he has 1 less shield, and maybe if he doesn't have Meganium, I can try and essentially get these Mud Bombs off quick before he can make a decision what to swap into. So he goes for a Superpower, does about half damage on Marshtomp, and he swaps out Melmetal right away, and brings in Meganium. So, at this point, I'm like, okay, this is what I was hoping against, but I didn't have too much of a choice based on the team of 3 I just created. So I throw a Mud Bomb, I farmed up a bunch of energy, I decided to go for the Surf for my second charge move, because I wasn't sure which one would do more damage against Meganium, and I knew they were both not very effective, so I'm like, let's throw both of them, see how much they do. They do about the same damage, so it didn't really make much of a difference. And at this point, his Meganium farmed me down. So I don't want to bring Galvantula here, because Galvantula is glassy. It'll resist Meganium's Frenzy Plant, but it'll take neutral damage against Meganium's Earthquake, whereas Altaria will resist both of those moves. So I just bring in Altaria. He's going to throw all his energy now because he's switch locked, his Meganium's stuck in there. So he's throwing a Frenzy Plant here, and I'm just going to commit to the farm down. I'm just going to Dragon Breath this Meganium down so that whatever he decides to bring in afterwards, whether it be his Melmetal or something else, I can at least throw some energy at it and have a chance at winning this battle. He goes for Earthquake, which you definitely don't want to go for, because it, as you saw there, it did the same amount of damage as the Frenzy Plant, and the Frenzy Plant is way less energy. So now I have up to a Dragon Pulse farmed up, and he brings in Azumarill. So I'm like, oh, let me switch in quick. But he already knew what I was going to do, so he switches in his Melmetal right away. So I was able to gain some quick energy and send off another Discharge here, because the quick move that you want to run on Galvantula is Volt Switch. Volt Switch is very good for damage, and it charges its quick moves pretty quickly. It's a slow move, similar to like Confusion, but the energy gain is worth it. So we both shield each other's charge moves here, and I'm trying to get to his next Discharge before he gets to his next charge move, and my opponent makes a big mistake here. You want to go for Rock Slide in this situation. He goes for Superpower, but Bug resists Superpower. So you don't want, or resist fighting. So you didn't want to do that. That essentially cost my opponent this match. If he would have threw Rock Slide, my Galvantula would have ended up being KO'd, and then I would have been stuck with my Altaria against his Azumarill. Now at this point, my Galvantula has a ton of energy, and he brings in his Azumarill, and you'll see how quickly I'm able to take down his Azumarill with my Galvantula, because it has very high attack. It's glassy, but even such a quick charge move like Discharge does a lot of damage. So I send off 2 discharges, and I end up taking that first match. So my opponent essentially bailed me out in that match, but to keep in mind, Bug resists fighting. That's an important thing to know. And Rock Slide, or Rock, is super effective against Bug. So if you're ever faced with that situation, you definitely don't want Galvantula up against a Melmetal, because that's not going to be a positive matchup for your Galvantula. And now in this next match, I decide I want to change up my team a little bit. I don't know if you could tell if I want to run Galvantula a lot or not. So I decide to change it up a bit, and I go with Galvantula as a lead again, but with Venusaur and Altaria behind it. Because you noticed my Marshtomp got pretty hard countered when I brought it in, and Venusaur and Altaria will both be good counters against his Meganium. But here we start this match, and he actually leads Meganium against my against my Galvantula, which is a very good matchup because Bug again resists Meganium's charge moves. So he decides he wants to swap his Meganium out and bring in Azumarill, which I found fascinating. And I was debating on the swap and bringing in Venusaur, but his Azumarill got like a little bit of energy while I was thinking. So I was like, let me just commit to Galvantula against his Azumarill. I can shield this Ice Beam that's about to come, and then Venusaur can essentially deal with his Meganium later on. So I'm still in a good situation here. He just threw his Ice Beam. I'm at another Discharge now. And like we saw in the last match, Discharge, as quickly as I charged it up, does about half of Meganium's health, maybe a little bit more. I'd say it's about 60%. And now I'm at the point where I can even farm it down. So now I have a shield, I have up to a Discharge on my Galvantula, and I have enough energy to wait to see his next Pokemon, and he brings in Melmetal. Now we're going to really find out how much this Discharge does against a Melmetal. And it just goes to show how strong Galvantula is, because that's neutral damage, and that still did about 2/3, 60% of Melmetal's health. So he charges up, he gets to a Rock Slide. I'm very grateful and happy with the amount of damage and amount of work Galvantula put in, so I'm willing to lose it. I know I can bring in Venusaur here. It'll take either neutral or not very effective damage from both of Melmetal's moves, and I also know Venusaur can charge up these charge moves like Frenzy Plant very quickly, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable. So I have Venusaur for his Melmetal, and I have Altaria for his Meganium in the back. And this match is essentially wrapped up. He brings in Meganium, and I go for the immediate swap, because as much as Venusaur has a great matchup against Meganium, Altaria does not have that great of a matchup against his Melmetal. So I want to make sure the right Pokemon line up with each other so I can finish this match and secure my victory. He goes for another charge move. At this point, there's literally nothing he can do. My Venusaur in the back has energy and enough health to deal with his Melmetal. His Meganium cannot do enough damage to my Altaria to even take it down. So I'm even at the point where I'm like over farming. I'm like, you know what, let's just finish this off quick. Let's farm up enough energy so I can just go for 2 straight Sky Attacks. He decides he wants to throw another charge move. He goes for another Frenzy Plant. And I'm like, okay, no problem. We see him P-Tide on that. But now I go for the Sky Attack. I could have probably just Dragon Breath down, but I was trying to just wrap up this match a little bit quicker. And I knew that I had enough energy for 2 Sky Attacks. As you'll see, I get to that next one right away. His Melmetal is essentially in the red, or already is in the red, so a Sky Attack is going to do plenty to finish it off. That's one other thing about Melmetal. When you saw that Discharge go through and it was neutral damage and did about like 60%, Melmetal's a great Pokemon for Master League and Ultra League because of the CP it maxes out at. In the Great League, it's a pretty glassy mon itself. It has Thunder Shock, which means it's going to charge up energy really quickly, but it can't really take damage that well, so you really want to make sure you have shields when you're using your Melmetal. So, those 2 battles are over, and now I'm going to show you 3 battles against another friend of mine, where I try and showcase Galvantula as the Pokemon in the back instead of in the lead position. Now, let's talk about my friend John the Savage's team. He's running Umbreon, Toxicroak, Venusaur, Mantine, Registeel, and Raichu. And again, I'm testing out Galvantula. I want to see how it does. I'm going to run it in the back and hope I can get it in a situation where it maybe has one shield and he's down to his final Pokemon or 2 Pokemon and they have no shields so that I can land some of Galvantula's big charge moves. That's the plan. Let's see if this works out. I essentially protect Galvantula similar to how I did in the first match. I decide I want to bring Altaria and Marshtomp again to take care of its weaknesses. And in this first match, we have Altaria against his Umbreon. Now, this is a matchup that I'm not too sure about. These are two of the biggest Metamons in Great League PvP, and I haven't really played out many situations where they face off against each other. I know they both deal neutral damage to each other, and they're both very tanky Pokemon. The big differences between Altaria and Umbreon is that Umbreon relies on sending as many charge moves as possible, whereas Altaria relies more on its quick move Dragon Breath to deal a bunch of damage and then get to a couple charge moves here and there. So you'll see throughout this matchup, he's going to land a bunch of foul plays, but notice how I get him in the yellow first because my Dragon Breaths really start to add up, even though all of this stuff is neutral damage on one another. So we're playing this out. He just finished sending that foul play, and I'm about to get to my next Sky Attack. I'm debating here if when he throws his next charge move, if I want to shield it or not. But that's going to depend on, 1, if he shields the Sky Attack, and 2, how low the Sky Attack gets him. So it gets him in the red, and I'm pretty confident at this point that I can farm him down with Dragon Breaths. I'm also pretty confident that I can survive another foul play, and the Snarls, because they charge energy so quick, don't do a lot of damage. So I'm pretty confident I can farm him down, which is what I do, and I pretty much have a Sky Attack here, but unfortunately Altaria wins this no-shield situation against Umbreon with barely any health. So whatever he brings in is going to essentially quickly farm me down. I click on the Sky Attack, he brings in Registeel, and even something as weak as Lock-On was able to farm me down. So this situation looks okay. I bring in Marshtomp. It can deal super effective damage against Registeel. You'll notice I didn't click the charge move right away because my opponent is a very strong adversary, and I kind of figured he would try to attempt to switch and catch a Mud Bomb. So I was trying to be very careful with it. So he switches right after his charge move. I bring in Galvantula, and this would look like a good situation in some scenarios because I have a bug Pokemon against his grass, but Venusaur is also a poison type. So you'll see that Sludge Bomb that he just did practically took out my Galvantula because of how glassy it was, even though it was neutral. So I charge up to a Bug Buzz. I was hoping he would assume I was going to bait since he had 2 shields, but he knew Bug Buzz was coming, he shielded it to be safe, and now I'm not in the best situation. So I come back in with my Marshtomp. It has a bunch of energy, but Venusaur is going to be doing double super effective damage with its Frenzy Plant and with its quick move Vine Whip. So I'm just like, I'm not going to be able to get myself out of this one. So overall, this match didn't go well because, yeah, I had Galvantula in the back in a matchup that could be positive for it, but I was at a shield disadvantage. And Galvantula, because of how heavy it is on its attack stat, means it's also a very glassy mon when it comes to its defense stat. So Galvantula going into a shield disadvantage is not the type of matchup you want it in a majority of situations. Unless it's really like going against like a water type that doesn't have like the strongest charge moves. So here, he swaps in his Registeel, and I land a Mud Bomb, which seems great, and I'm farming up, but I know that his Venusaur they just swapped out has a bunch of energy. So I over-farmed there. I over-farmed because I was trying to land like 2 Mud Bombs back-to-back, because even if I took out Registeel, his Venusaur was going to come back in and take me out anyway, so that ends up being GG once he lands that Flash Cannon. I didn't really have much of a chance in that match once Galvantula was at a shield disadvantage. So that was very unfortunate and one of the main weaknesses of Galvantula. It doesn't necessarily need a shield advantage, but it's not going to be a Pokemon that helps you win a match where you're at a shield disadvantage. So this next match, debating to myself what kind of changes I can make, and I decided to go back to Galvantula in the lead, and I run it with Altaria and Lucario this time, because Lucario has a quick move counter, which will also deal super effective damage to his Registeel if he does bring it, whereas Marshtomp has Mud Shot, which is super effective against Registeel, but Mud Shot isn't a strong quick move, it's more for energy gain, whereas counter can gain you good energy and deal more damage. So we start this matchup. I have Galvantula against his Umbreon, which I'm pretty sure is a positive matchup for me. I haven't gotten the chance to play it out completely, but I'm almost 100% sure that Bug Buzz or any bug charge move would be super effective against his Umbreon. So he decides he wants to switch out, and he brings in Toxicroak. And I took a minute. I was debating if I wanted to keep Galvantula in or not because I had so much energy stored. I'm like, you know what? Let me go with Altaria. Altaria has a good matchup against Toxicroak, and you'll notice I shield that Sludge Bomb because I took so long to make the decision to swap. I knew he had a bunch of energy, so I figured he'd go for it. I was able to shield it, so now my Altaria has a really good advantage on his Toxicroak, and he throws this charge move here, which ends up being a Mud Bomb. At this point, I farmed up a bunch of energy, and I'm just going to completely farm him down because after that Mud Bomb, I know his Toxicroak is not going to be able to deal much damage to me at all, and Altaria is essentially sitting here with either 1.5 Sky Attacks or 2. So I throw one of them right away, because I know it'll do good neutral damage against his Umbreon, and my plan is essentially to bring Galvantula back in once my switch timer runs out, which is taking a little while, but I want to have that positive matchup and see what his third Pokemon is because I have such an advantage on his team right now. And I also know I can bring Galvantula in, and even if he brings in something to counter it, I still have Lucario to deal with that Umbreon. So that was my logic. Typically, I wouldn't recommend swapping in something just because you have an advantage, because usually then they can bring in something to hard counter you, and then you can lose that advantage. But I also didn't want to lose my Altaria, so I was just kind of like debating. Those were just the thoughts that were going through my mind as I was playing out this matchup. So he lands a Last Resort, which I'm like, okay, that does a decent amount of damage. He does a quick swap before I can get to another Bug Buzz, and I end up landing this Discharge on his Venusaur. So now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, this works even better, because once Galvantula goes down, I can bring in Altaria, and that'll do solid damage against his Venusaur, and I'll take it out. And then I have Lucario saved up that will be able to finish off his Umbreon in the back. So even though Galvantula didn't really get to showcase its strengths too much in this specific match, it did give me switch advantage throughout the entire match because I essentially, I guess, won lead because he was so worried to keep his Umbreon in against my Galvantula. So I let Altaria go down here. I bring in Lucario because I want to get it some energy and I want to get it. I want to get some power-up punches in to power up its counters. And he decides he's going to throw his charge move here, which is Frenzy Plant, which deals resisted damage, but Frenzy Plant's a strong move, and Lucario's glassy. And I also know his Umbreon on the back isn't going to be sending any charge moves that are going to hurt Lucario much. So I'm like, let's shield that. I'll start getting in these power-up punches, and now you'll notice my counters are powered up. He swaps in his Umbreon, but at this point, this match is essentially over. Even if his Umbreon's able to charge a charge move up and land it, it's not going to take out my Lucario. And my counters have been powered up twice at this point, and you'll notice how much more damage they just did, and they took out that Umbreon in literally 2 counters. He brings in Venusaur, and that finishes off the match because the Venusaur literally had no health left. So what we take away from this was that Galvantula did help. It didn't seem as obvious because it didn't get a chance to deal damage, but it essentially gave me switch advantage throughout the entire match because I'd won that lead with Galvantula on his Umbreon. And it's not, playing against Umbreon isn't exactly an easy lead to win unless you're usually bringing a fighter. So Galvantula there, another good use for it, counter Umbreons. So this next match, I decide, what do I decide on running for this match? I go with Galvantula in the back again because I still want to test that. I want to see if I can get it in the right situation where it has a shield advantage or it's on equal shields and play it out and see how well it does. And with this team, I end up going with Venusaur as the lead, with Marshtomp and Galvantula. So I'm bringing in Venusaur here. He leads with Alolan Raichu. This is a great lead for me because all of Raichu's moves that he's going to be running on it are going to deal not very effective damage. Because most of the time in this meta, you want to run your Alolan Raichu with Thunder Punch and Grass Knot. You could run Psychic on your Alolan Raichu, but that's very situational. So he swaps in Umbreon, and I bring in Galvantula just to see how good this matchup ends up being. I know he's going for a Last Resort because his Dark Foul Play charge move is going to deal not very effective damage against me. I charge up a Bug Buzz, but I send a Discharge because I want to bait him. I want him to be very worried about the Bug Buzz damage. He shields it, so I'm like, great. I got one shield with my Galvantula. Now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm sitting here and I decide not to shield because this is going to be another last resort, but we saw in the last match I can tank it and those snarls are not doing a bunch of damage. So I charge up to a bug buzz again and I go for the bait one more time. So I'm about to throw this discharge and I think our switch timer is slowly starting to run out, so I have to be careful here. But he's throwing more snarls, I'm charging up more energy, and I'm trying to keep an eye on the switch clock because I don't want him to swap out his Umbreon, and then I land the Bug Buzz on another one of his Pokemon. He goes for the foul play, and notice how I threw an extra Volt Switch because I was worried about him switching, and what does he end up doing? He ends up switching. So the Bug Buzz and my attempt at landing it on his Umbreon end up failing, but it lands on the Venusaur. And see that neutral damage? That took out 2/3 to 3/4 of that Venusaur. So I'm like, alright, you know what? Didn't land on Umbreon, still kind of worked itself out. That Bug Buzz deals a lot of damage. Let's see how many times I say Bug Buzz in this video or towards this part of the video. Anyhow, Venusaur had energy, my Venusaur, and I threw a Sludge Bomb to take out his before it can really do any damage. And he brings in his Alolan Raichu because I guess it had energy and he was hoping to get some of it off. But at this point, with the amount of health my Venusaur has, nothing his Raichu can throw is going to really threaten my Venusaur. So I go for Frenzy Plant. Even though this is neutral damage, Alolan Raichu, similar to Galvantula, is very glassy and very attack heavy. So that Frenzy Plant takes it out. He brings in his Umbreon, and I'm hoping I can just get to this Frenzy Plant before he gets to his charge move. He beats me, but I don't think, I mean, we're going to find out now for sure. I don't remember if this foul play takes me out or not. It does not. I have a sliver of health, and I get to this Frenzy Plant, and I land it, and it's going to win me the match. And you'll notice that I didn't even use my third Pokemon. I didn't even end up using Marshtomp in this match, just because of how well Galvantula was able to bait his shields and have him worried, and then Venusaur was just tanky enough to handle any damage from his other Pokemon. So, in conclusion, Galvantula, solid Pokemon for the Voyager Cup. I like it as both a lead or as a closer. It's up to you how you want to test it out. Let me know if this video convinced you to try it out. I'm curious to see what teams of 6 you can form around it. I didn't really focus this team specifically on Galvantula. It kind of just came up as I was putting it together, and I'm like, you know what? Let's give it a try. It has Volt Switch, which is a great quick move. It deals a lot of damage and charges relatively quickly, and then it has access to that Thunder Punch and that Bug Buzz, which are some very, not Thunder Punch, it has access to Discharge and that Bug Buzz, which are very heavy hitting moves, as you can clearly see. That Bug Buzz took out 3/4 of a Venusaur, and that was neutral damage. So, unlike my last Voyager Cup video, this team of 6 is suiting me a lot better. I'm pretty satisfied with it now. Obviously, as the meta develops, that doesn't mean I won't change or stray away from this team of 6, but right now, Galvantula is serving me very well, along with the other mons that make up this team of 6. So, let me know what you think of my team of 6, and let me know what teams of 6 you've been trying out for this Voyager Cup. We'll see how the meta adapts, and we'll see if I have to make any changes, but as of right now, I'm pretty content with it. Until next episode, I'll see you guys soon.